Hey everybody, as you are finding your seat, just a reminder for the Q&A part of the seminar is going to happen at the end of it. So as we are going through the seminar, listening to the three amazing speakers that we have today to talk with us and share with us their perspectives on the future of wine, which is no small topic indeed, and I hope that you are enjoying the provocative title of this, as if we're going to figure it all out in the next hour and a half. But please be sure to ask questions on the WOVA app. If you haven't downloaded that yet, please do so. Put questions in throughout the seminar, and at the end for the Q&A, we will go through those questions, select from them. We'll also have the ability to ask questions in real time from the microphones as well. So if you haven't download the WOVA app, please do so, and we'll keep moving.
Is it Hoover or
Hoover? Hoover, WOVA. We'll ask the tech guy, Paul. Is it Hoover or WOVA?
I don't know, actually.
Anybody know for sure?
It seems like it could be both, right?
So the real question here, is it VRBO or is it Verbo? Let's talk about marketing. No. So, in the winter of 2020, like I know some of you in this room, I was flying around the country as quickly as possible to sell as much wine as I possibly could, because there was this impending virus that was already wreaking havoc around the world. On Friday, March 13th, I went to a wine festival in Florence, Alabama, in Muscle Shoals, danced at an incredible party, and was set to fly to LA the following Monday, and the world shut down, and I never went. At that time, in 2020, I was consulting for a few different wineries, as well as serving as the winemaker and general manager at Antiquum Farm, located here in the South Willamette Valley. That early spring of 2020 became very quiet as the world shut down. On-premise sales all but disappeared. The DTC slowed. Off-premise peaked in a way that no one could have expected it to. Luckily, life itself continued, and I took comfort in the farm where I was working as vines grew anew, piglets were born, and this guy made his way into the world. That's Sean, in case anybody wanted to know. Just a few weeks later, the murder of George Floyd, I don't want to say discovery, but what had been hidden about the death of Ahmaud Arbery, and the murder of Breonna Taylor galvanized much-needed racial reconciliation in this country. In Portland, we experienced 100 days of marches. And the long-held, long-simmering biases and prejudices that I held myself needed to be exposed and worked on. That was a pivotal moment in what happened during that time period on the back of COVID and on the back of one of the most tumultuous presidential campaigns that we have ever seen. This is a picture from September 8th, 2020. I was driving down I-5. This is just passing through Wilsonville, which if you're going one way is full of traffic, and if you're going the other way, you can speed through pretty quickly. This is smoke that came through, settled into the Willamette Valley for 10 days and did not leave. As a community, we gathered together, seeking to figure out what it meant. Some of the most incredible work that I've seen done in the Oregon Wine Board and Willamette Valley Wineries Association put us all into a world where we needed to know, what is the impact of this thing going to be? And all that we could do in the end was everybody make their best guesses. In that time, two of my winemaking clients were fortunate enough to pick every single grape that they had contracted. We made wine with relatively little smoke impact, and that was pure luck. Antiquum Farm was not so lucky. Every single grape was picked and every effort deployed to save the vintage, but in the end, it was a total and complete loss. Not a drop of wine was bottled from the 2020 vintage. 2021, it was a seesaw. It was up and down as businesses continued to weather the operational storms of increasing costs, limited supply, and labor shortages. Some on-premise accounts shuttered, others survived and thrived. Off-premise sales stabilized a little bit. Direct-to-consumer sales increased, but not enough to recover what had been lost. Inflation began and continued to rise at an alarming rate. The new normal was discussed as if any of this had ever been normal at all. At Antiquum Farm, the full economic impact of the vintage loss began to take shape. As inventory fully depleted, and we were left asking the question, what is the purpose of a winery that has no wine? It required a deep and personal and professional look into values. It also acknowledged the company wouldn't survive another total loss. 2022 became a year of financial struggle where survival skills were developed. And thankfully, the eventual release of the 2021 vintage turned on the revenue stream again. The end of 2022 brought more change for me personally. I left Antiquum Farm, launched a strategic management firm focused on bringing the wine business into its next life, helping owners and teams navigate the multidisciplinary realities that their businesses face each day. This is the story of why I am here. So why are we here? Each of you, like everyone in this room, like me, has a story that has brought you here. The past few years have been an incredible challenge. They've asked more of us than we probably thought that we could give. Some of us have experienced the ultimate loss of death in our families. Some of us have struggled to figure out how we're supposed to move through, how we're supposed to address the challenges that have come from the racial reconciliation long needed in this country, how we do well for others, how it is that we talk about politics and economics. But through it all, it is your story that has brought you here. For some, when it comes to wine, that's a wine story of decades. You've been in this business so long and have seen these changes and challenges, things that looked similar before. For some of you, that's a wine story that's only a year old. We all have walked through it the past few years. And today, we're here to continue to discover what the next chapters of that story will be. The future of wine. We're going to look into 3 areas today: technology and the lessons to be learned from it, operations, and culture. Each of our speakers today bring a wealth of perspective and knowledge, brimming for the hope of what the future of wine will be. Our goal here today is twofold in the seminar. We want to inspire you with big ideas, and we also want you to walk away with things that are practical and can be applied today. So I hope that you will come with us on the journey as we sit here for about the next hour and a half together. Our speakers today come from a wide range of backgrounds and from perspectives, and bring with them institutional knowledge and a deep desire to see the wine industry be what it should. First, we're going to have Paul Mabray, who has spent the past few decades working in technology, both within the wine industry and outside of it. Paul has been a key catalyst in technology that we all use every day, whether you know it or not, as you operate your businesses, from time spent with wine.com, at Wine Direct, and now with Pix Wine. He is one of the great thinkers of our industry, really planning for the future of what this all will look like. And Paul, we'd love to have you here with us today.
Thank you. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Do I need a mic? Good. Yeah, I do need a mic. Okay, use the mic. Good morning. Can you hear me now? Oh, there. Check, check. I haven't seen so many of you since the plague, right? That's how I start every day now, right? It's good to see a lot of people. I want to hug every single one of you in the crowd right now. I'm not lying. I've become quite the hugger. We have a great lineup of speakers. I know that Justin Nolan, who works with Treasury and 19 Crimes, is going to wrap his speech today, so sure. All right, let's start. Good morning. I feel weird behind that. I might step out of this for a second. So I think we can all agree that we live in a digital world. Can we agree with that, right? Okay, how many of you have smartphones? Okay, how many of you use social media? Okay, you don't use social media? Okay, thank you. All right. And how many of you buy e-commerce, right? That's everybody in this room, right? Pretty much, except for that guy right there. Pretty much. It's real now. I've been so many times on stage talking about, hey, e-commerce is coming, social media is coming. It's here. It's gone. It's been there for a while, right? I also want to remind us that we live in the most competitive market in human history. I start every speech with that. And I say it every year, and I've said every year for the last 20 years. And it's still true every year. It's harder and more. Oh, I love that you pointed at him, by the way. She's okay. But not only are we competing against each other, actually, we're competing outside of each other. We're competing against categories all over the place. When I was a kid, there was never something called hard kombucha. I didn't even know regular kombucha, by the way. And there was a whole aisle in Whole Foods, right? And drinkers have changed since the beginning. It used to be a wine drinker, a beer drinker, a spirits drinker. We are now omni drinkers. We drink it all. Justin and I drank it all the last couple nights, I'll be honest with you. We had a couple great nights. Unfortunately, wine is also the most expensive per ounce, right? I know you guys have seen the Silicon Valley Bank report with all the doom saying, right? Well, for younger generations, no wonder they aren't buying. It's too expensive. A buzz per buck is not great. So we've had our second year of declines. It's ominous out there, isn't it? It feels weighty. And also, we just got done with probably one of the worst events of all time. Our second Black Swan event after Prohibition, we had COVID. We had never seen a market change like COVID had done for us. But COVID did something special. The wine industry was one of the last industries in the world that had not adopted the internet. Let me say that again. The wine industry was one of the last industries in the world. And had we not had COVID, that unfortunate, terrible event, we wouldn't be using the internet the same way, right? Huge boom in spikes. And many of you probably drank as you homeschooled your children. I know I did, just like this lady. By the way, I am a terrible teacher. I just want everyone to know that ahead of time. Everything shifted online. Every single thing moved towards online, right? And we saw huge shifts from when we were only making 3% for e-commerce to 10%. That was a big deal for us. It was a meaningful part of our business all of a sudden. Now, was that business auto-magically there? No, it had been there the whole time, actually. We just had not been doing it, right? And e-commerce was anticipated to continue to grow over time. I'm sure you guys have seen the Silicon Valley Bank report, but unfortunately, we're flat. Why is that, right? We're flat. So the promise of e-commerce is saying it's not there. I'm going to tell you it is there. The reason we're flat is because most of us don't know how to acquire new customers. What we're doing is we're tapping into the customers that were already there, right? And we have a dearth of professionals like Justin Nolan in the industry to help us learn how to acquire, target, set up technologies. What I wanted to let you guys know is that the future is bright. This is about to be the golden age of wine online. I kid you not. Tools are cheaper than they've ever been. Shopify, Commerce 7. You know, there's all kinds of email stuff that would cost $250,000 a couple years ago and cost a few thousand, maybe $100, right? We are about to enter the golden age of wine. So what I wanted to talk to you guys about is nothing fixes tech as a tool. What fixes tech is cultural changes. And so for us to adopt technology and to use it for the future, I think we should leverage someone who's pretty damn good at technology. I'm sure you guys have heard of this little valley called Silicon Valley. It's not quite the same as Willamette. It's not quite the same as Napa or Sonoma, but it's pretty good about technology. So there's 12 lessons I'm going to walk you through. I'm going to jam through them quick. I want to make sure that you hear them, and then you can ask me questions about them later. The wine industry has not quite learned yet that we need to be obsessed with the customer first. Technology is always obsessed with the customer first. They put them at the beginning of every thought process, right? Usage is their oxygen, right? They're thinking about the customer in every single way they do that. And how can they supply what the customer wants and needs? And how can they listen to that customer? So I'm going to give you a little tiny example of this. Have you ever seen this fish, the Patagonian toothfish? That is a damn ugly fish, let's just say. That is a very ugly fish. So this fish is one of the greatest growing fish in the world, makes the best white meat, and it wouldn't sell for days, right? It's plentiful. There's no shortage of it. So they went and they asked the customers, why don't you like this fish, besides the fact that it's ugly? Well, it sounds stupid. So what they did through listening and putting the customer first, what they found out is it sounds a lot better if you call it Chilean sea bass. It's a lot tastier than the Patagonia. Look at that. That or that. I'm eating, all right? Putting the customer first drives it forward. There's a theory in technology which is called jobs to be done. I highly recommend you go Google it, look it up, learn about it. It's called jobs to be done. And what jobs to be done is we don't do things to buy, we don't buy a drill to own a drill. We buy a drill to make a hole, right? That's the job that we're trying to fulfill, right? So we don't buy skateboard parts to have parts and put them together. We buy skateboard parts to skate, to go have a fun time, right? We forget that in the wine industry, right? We have tasting notes and we talk about the flavors and the currents. Our job is to deliver happiness. Our job is to deliver camaraderie. Let me say that again. Our job is to deliver happiness. That's the job to be done with wine, right? Happiness and joy. That's a pretty darn good job if you ask me. We may not be, curing cancer, but delivering joy, sign me up. Blue ocean strategy, right? In the tech business, they're always trying to look for what's the next new wave. What can they do that no one else does that they can absorb? Unfortunately, in the wine industry, we all kind of look the same, right? Sustainable, family-owned, biodynamic, organic. I'm sure you've heard these words before, right? They don't mean anything when we're all saying them. So what do we need to do? We need to think differently. We need to find what makes us special as a winery that stands outside the crowd and we can attract that audience. What is our blue ocean strategy, right? In the case of Treasury, they launched this great brand with Snoop Dogg. You wouldn't think that's a hit, and it was an amazing hit. It's been one of the greatest onboardings for a whole new culture of drinkers. And we can look down on it and say it's not great. We need more drinkers. We need more wine drinkers, as you saw earlier. Everything in the wine industry, or everything in digital industry, everything in Silicon Valley is digital first. How can I provide information so they can read it on the phone? That Library of Alexandria that we have in our pockets, right? We're really smart right now having this in our pocket, right? How can we make sure that a customer can get to us digitally? So my wife runs a winery in Sonoma called Donham, and they only took reservations by the phone for 2 years straight because that's how they did it. And they said, well, we're a high-end elevated experience with an average suggested retail price of $125. We should really cater to these people. Do you know how many people were mad at them that they just didn't have an email sign-up form to get reservations or a talk or anything like that? When they added that talk system to their thing, reservations, 500% growth in reservations, 300% reduction in customer service problems that they're having because they weren't answering the phone on time, right? Simple, digital. It sounds simple, but this is a winery that is well-financed to do it, right? Data. Silicon Valley loves data. We are the data. Facebook, Google, right? But they use data in ways, they collect data in all kinds of different ways. And we're collecting data, actually. There's a ton of data that you as a winery are collecting that you can use to actually guide your business, right? All of that DTC data is data you're collecting to know more about your customers. In fact, Nike, which is a story, I think they're 60% DTC now. And it's not just because of the margin release, it's because they're getting closer to the customer so they can get the feedback loop to feed the market, right? Let me show you a couple data things that are really interesting here. So if you look at any major California winery's DTC program, their map almost always will look like this. The most sales are coming from California, probably 80 to 90% of their sales, if they're DTC, are coming from California. And of that, 90 to 80% of them are coming from the San Francisco Bay Area or LA. That means that most California wineries are only fishing from the same pond. right? You think that you might go, oh, those dang California wineries are so oversaturated. Well, look, this is an Oregon winery. Almost every single Oregon winery, if you look at their DTC data, looks like this, where Oregon is the lit up one, and most of those sales are coming from right around here locally. That tells you a lot about your business right now. That tells you how you support it. That tells you how you can make club benefits better, right? How can you make benefits that follow someone home if they go home to Boston? How do you target consumers that are not even in Oregon, right? That's the great thing. So when I told you this is a world of opportunity, this California wine, you saw that, look, $8 million worth of sales right there. $8 million worth of sales. And they have a whole country of opportunity to sell wine to, right? And the same in Oregon. Get back to all right. Measure what matters, right? Everything has a KPI associated with it. And great tech companies don't start with the hardest stuff. They build simply. What's the lifetime value? What's our customer acquisition cost, right? What is our return on advertising spend, our ROAS? These are things that we need to get used to speaking about in the wine industry. I'm sorry, this podium is getting in my way. And we need to learn how to measure more and more, right? Investing. We're going to lose money, by the way, just so you know. This is called the fish model, which is for a period of time as we do investment into technology and people, it's going to feel like we're losing money. But the good news about technology is it scales people. Technology is just a tool that scales people. It makes one person work like 10 or 100 or 1,000. In social media, one social media manager can talk to tens of thousands of people. One email, if it's done well, can talk to a whole audience, right? That's what technology allows you to do. And if you can string it together where it's doing it on its own, or ChatGPT is generating the dumb messages while you're doing the smart thinking ones, you can do a lot of different things. And that includes talent. We have a dearth of talent in the wine. How many digital people do you know in wine? 10? 20? How many experts in digital wine do you know in the wine industry? So look at these are great people. This is the VP of Growth for Eventbrite, Brian Wathberg. How many of you would hire him to make your wine? Raise your hand if you'd hire him to make your wine. No. So why do we hire young people without professional experience to run digital for us at a cheap price, right? Why do we not assign the best talent to get us to the next place? That's expensive. People like Justin are not cheap. No offense, Justin. Oh, you're a little cheap, but a little cheap. So we're going to have to spend more money against this. And I know it sounds, but the ability for us to touch the rest of the country digitally and sell wine in Boston or Austin, in Florida or Alaska, hell, even Utah maybe, if we're lucky. I'm joking, obviously, but right? We are risk adverse in the wine industry, actually. And it makes sense. Our culture is built around risk aversion. How many times do we have a chance to make a wine? Once a year, right? And if you lose that vintage, as we just heard, you can't get it back. You can't screw up. It has built a culture of risk aversion, and we actually don't fail forward. I don't care who you are in the wines. There's no one that knows your brand better than you. And whether it's an expert like Justin or myself, no one knows how to sell your wine online yet. So you have to learn. That means your people have to fail. You have to give permission for them to go make mistakes. I know it sounds antithetical to the normal thing. You can't just do it once. You have to do it a couple times and learn from it. And that's what technology does in Silicon Valley. They're iterative. They fail forward. They do a campaign. They do a postmortem. They come back and try again and keep iterating and iterating. It's the normal way, progressively moving forward. Something we have to learn in the wine industry significantly because we're going to fail a lot because this is all undone. No one's done these things before. In the tech industry, they really believe in testing and then throwing gasoline on it when it finds. It's a joke around. It's called the nail it, then scale it. So here are two book titles, and I'll give you the third one. Has anyone heard of Broadband in the White Sand? No. Or how about The Millionaire Chameleon? Well, these were two potential titles of a book that a famous artist did where he put these names out. He put them on Google AdWords, and the ones that got clicked the most became the name of the book. Obviously, neither of these books became the name of the book. You probably more likely heard the one, right? The 4-Hour Workweek. It's got a better ring than the Millionaire's Chameleon or whatever that is, right? But think about that for a second. They're using Google to test what the consumer wants to get and would want to buy. So whether you're going up mocks of labels or how you talk about your winery or family-owned versus sustainable, you can go test that for a couple $100. and see which one's going to hit before you leverage it and move it out to the broad market. You could go mock up some labels and do them on Instagram and say, which one of these do you like the most before you print the dang thing, which is expensive and you can't take it off the bottles, right? Nail it and scale it. Building loyalty. The loyalty loop is something foundational. We used to think of customer acquisition through the funnel, right? Tofu. Well, now we think of customer acquisition through this thing called the loyalty loop. And it's come over the last decade because the usage is our oxygen in technology. They want you to use the tools over and over. Ironically, usage is our oxygen in wine. We want people to drink our wine not once, not twice, but 3 or 4 times. And it's hard to get them to taste it because there's an infinite amount of choices of wine. Oregon alone, I could probably drink an Oregon wine from a different winery every day of the year and still not cycle through all the Oregon wineries, right? Or 2 or 3, and then I'd have a problem. But that's a different story, right? So loyalty loop is really key that you're aligning yourself with your consumer value, right? And it makes you buy again and again. We need to be thinking about that. And no one knows better than us now, thanks to COVID, that retention is the new acquisition, right? Keeping that customer kept us alive. A lot of us businesses stayed alive because our customers were there in our club, that we had those database and we were able to. We need to do that more and more. We need to be putting money towards how much money are we saving or spending to retain our customers. Do you have a budget for your customer retention? Who has a customer retention budget? This is not uncommon. This right there. I just said it to you, right? Customer retention budget. What does that look like? Who has a customer retention plan, right? Customer acquisition plan. And by the way, not every customer is the same, right? Not every customer is important, but not every customer has the same importance. Let me say that again. Every customer is important, but not every customer has the same importance. Some customers are worth way more to you, and they should have better retention dollars spent on them than someone who's just coming in for a discount, right? That's super important for us. And because of the loyalty loop, we are in this thing called the subscription economy. You know, the first 3 companies that did the subscriptions were magazines, the Tower Record Club, which most of you don't remember. I'm dating myself with the little stamps. You guys remember that? Man, I'm super dating myself. Thank you. God, they're super nice. And then wine. But our wine model has stayed the same for 30 or 40 years. And yet, subscriptions have come as the mainstream online. I kind of bucket them for you. There's 4 types of kind of major subscriptions, but everything from Plated to Loot Crate to Funko, there's so much subscriptions on there. We should be buying and learning from subscription businesses outside of wine. I know a lot of you do it. Stitch Fix, who does Stitch Fix in there? Okay, how do we start to think about these differently, right? And align them. And what makes that special, by the way, if you guys don't know, you know the reason all these guys have went into subscription? It's because you get a higher multiple for your business, a significantly higher multiple than your business. You can get up to 10x of your business just by using this equation right here, which is a subscription economy equation, to tell how much money you're possibly to revenue, right? Adding this to your business alone will make your valuation 10x your EBITDA. So we are in total cost of ownership. This is really important here. The wine industry teaches technology like a project. We do a website. It's done. We'll touch it again in 3 years. Do you know a tech company that doesn't touch its website the same day, maybe twice, 100 times? How many of you have updated your website this month? Nice. How many of you update your website every month? Wow, that is awesome. I love Oregon more and more all of a sudden. Thank you for that. It is a living, breathing entity that you're investing in. And every technology project that you start, e-commerce, social media, it's not a project. It is a forever thing that you're spending like a credit card doing. And you have to spend it not just on the technology, you have to spend it on the people and keep training them forever because technology is moving faster than we can imagine, right? Social media rules are changing day by day, whether Elon Musk is having a temper tantrum on Twitter or we have new platforms, TikTok, all kinds of different ways. And those are changing their algorithms, learning that we're having to adapt to. And so if we don't spend our money on that, we have a deficit of that. It's like a credit card bill that you haven't spent down and you haven't paid down. Eventually, it becomes so expensive that you can't pay it down. And we have proof of that in the United States, in California. We did not pay down and upgrade our infrastructure for decades at PG&E. And like you, we experienced terrible, terrible fires as a result of them not paying down that technical debt and that total cost of ownership. So your budget should grow for your technology is my point. You should be thinking about a budget that you're spending even when your website's done, because it's never done. When your CRM project, cleaning up your mailing list, buying new technologies, testing new technologies. And I know it sounds expensive, but I promise you that fish model pays off, right? Because at some point, one person can talk to 1,000. One person can talk to 10,000. Danny Brager can talk to everyone in the world, right? But if you haven't taken any of these lessons, the one thing, and this is my buddy Gary Vaynerchuk, just give a shit about your customers. Just care, right? Because at the end of the day, all of these tools, all of these things, that's what we're trying to do. We want to keep our customers, right? We want them to be a part of us, and we want to use this technology trends to keep them. Thank you so much. Check.
Check, check.
I love the piece in that of sort of the no one has seen this before. For those of us who are just down listening to Greg Jones talk about the climatology, there is this sense of perpetually that no one has seen this before. And I think oftentimes we in the wine business, we see things that we've never seen before, but we keep acting like we were before. And those two things don't match. So that failing forward model, that piece of it is incredibly important. Next, Justin Nolan, who is the Senior Director of DTC Marketing and E-commerce at Treasury Wine Estates, is going to share about operations, and particularly in digital, following on what Paul has been talking about. He works with an incredible team at TWE and enables new technology to build better ways to connect with customers online. The specialization that Justin brings is in a channel-agnostic approach to digital marketing, giving brands the opportunity to deepen their engagement with the customer, try new things, learn through data, and support the customer towards the purchase path of their choice, not our choice, their choice. Justin.
Thank you, thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? We're good? Awesome. I love the thumbs up way in the back. Great stuff. Anyways, so here today it's operations, right? But think about it as connecting the dots. We have Paul talking about technology, which is, technology is the future of everything, so of course it's the future of wine. We have Akemi talking about people, and how do we get from technology to people? What are all of the different ways that we're looking to connect our products, our industry, to the people that are actually buying them? So I actually didn't come from wine. I spent most of my career in health. And in health, we have this thing called the region beta paradox. Put it simply, it means that sometimes you're better off having a worse condition. Because when you have a worse condition, people are really resilient. And they will make changes in their lives. They'll do all of the things that they need to do in order to get better. So if you just have some chronic thing that's irritating you, you might not go to a doctor. You might not get treatment. You might not get help. And it's just going to be lasting and lasting and lasting. Right? Versus if you had a heart attack, you're probably going to the doctor and you're probably going to start making life changes and you're probably going to be better off in the long run for it. But region beta paradox is something that happens in all industries and all things. And since it was Valentine's Day, I thought a better example might be this one. If you're in a mediocre relationship right now, you're probably going to stay in that mediocre relationship for a while. If you're in a very shitty relationship right now, you're going to break up with that person and you're going to have a much better chance of finding an excellent person down the road. So if you're in that mediocre relationship right now, maybe don't look so down on your friends that are in the bad ones because they might be in a better spot. Anyways, happy Valentine's Day, everybody. So wine's region beta paradox. So this is one of those things. And again, nobody's going to stand up on a stage and tell you that COVID was a good thing, right? We can accept that, but let's get beyond it. So don't put me on Twitter saying this guy said COVID was awesome, because it's not. I get it. All I'm saying is the digital age for wine was going to come anyways. It was happening. It was on its way. Wine as an industry, can be very conservative, can be very slow-moving, can be very, I would say, plodding, if you will, on its path towards the future. The region beta paradox for wine meant that our condition had to get worse real bad in order for us to start getting better. And it continues to be that way. It continues to be an area in which we kind of need to get used to being uncomfortable, because all of us in this, first off, how many people in here have any connection to direct-to-consumer for your wineries? Okay, you guys are my people, so thank you for coming and enjoying. Most of this presentation is going to be about why direct-to-consumer people are the right people to be leading the digital transformation in wine. But it does get uncomfortable. So thinking about DTC as an ethos, right? It's not just a channel. Don't think about it as these are the people that walk through our doors. Think about it as a relationship with a customer. If you have a digital ad that you're segmenting really, really well, if you have emails that you're sending out, that is communication directly to a customer. That's a relationship that you're building directly with a customer. That's DTC. There's no way around it. So why is DTC, and why are all of you people that are my people, the right people for digital transformation? So we'll get into each of these but people in DTC are scrappy. We're iterative. We like to tell stories. That's part of the job. We build relationships with customers. We know our customers, and we welcome everyone. So I'm gonna hustle through this because I know there's gonna be lots of good questions and stuff at the end, and we want to make sure we have lots of time for that. Plus, I think Akimi's presentation is way more important than mine, so I want to make sure she's got her time. So, scrappy and iterative, and some of the stuff you heard Paul talk about, right? Iterative is the idea that you try something, see if it works. If it doesn't work, you try something else. Everybody in their tasting room has built an experience that they thought, man, customers are really going to love this one, and they didn't. And that's okay, but you didn't keep doing it over and over and over again. You built something new. You tried something else. You created a different scenario. So we are a scrappy and iterative group, like in our DNA. That's how DTC works. But we often shy away from the processes. We shy away from the technology. If you're lucky enough to have like an IT team or something like that, oftentimes we hand projects to an IT team, or we hand projects to the technical guy, or to your friend's kid, because he's probably pretty good at that too. But we need to get involved. We need to be part of the building of the technology that we're using. We need to be able to use it every day. It's not about adoption, it's about creation. It's you taking ownership of those things. Technology is just meant to enable you to do a better job, right? It's meant to enable you to go faster, better, stronger. And if it's not doing that, you need to be thinking about the technology that you guys are using. Maybe it's something that right now is development heavy and it needs to get back to that WYSIWYG standard stuff because you're not a programmer. That's perfectly okay. But also, again, it's this iterative thing, right? Technology is constantly changing. So don't get stuck on it. This is what we do. Look at it and say, what's next? What are the pieces that we're going to be doing? How are we going to go about it? And I'm going, Paul says, fail forward, fail fast. With my team, we use the phrase, we get better every day, even on the days that we got worse. Because we're learning from our mistakes, and we built a culture around making mistakes is fine. I'm a huge baseball fan, and there's a phrase in baseball that if you get a hit 3 out of 10 times, you're a Hall of Famer. So we kind of use the same philosophy. If something that we do works 3 out of 10 times, we're going to scale it, and we're going to go and be very, very successful. We like to tell stories. DTC, I mean, that's what we do, right? People come into a tasting room. We send out an email. We build, materials for other people to have, for other people to take home. But we don't tell the same story necessarily to every person that comes in, right? You have a club member that's been into your building 10 times this year. You're not telling them the same origin story, right? You're not telling them the people story. You're not telling them the place story. So people, place, and process is basically, that covers like 98% of all stories in wine. You're either talking about a family or a winemaker or something like that. You're talking about a terroir or a location, or you're talking about what barrel we put it in, how did we ferment it. Those are all the same stories. They're all awesome. Some people want to know them, most people don't, and that's okay. Just remember, don't think about those stories. Think about the stories that you tell after. After you've already been through those stories with your customer, what's the next one that you do? Because those are the ones that really start to get interesting to people. Those are the ones that are actually connecting because you probably know that person a little bit. You've got a bit of an idea of what they like and what they care about, and now you're telling them a story that places them at the center, that gives them the opportunity to be a part of it. So, catered stories and occasions, making your customer the star. Why are they buying your wine? What are they doing with it? We tell a lot of stories that are about us. We need to start telling more stories that are about them, that are how we help them. What are we doing for them today? How are we building more value for them? And context matters, right? Like, there are certain stories you shouldn't tell to certain people because they're not going to appreciate them. And that's okay too. But thinking about format. Every social platform format's a little bit different. If you built something that's long form and it's meant to live on a blog, it's probably not your Instagram post. But that's okay too. Learn how to format. Learn how to get the right context for the right people. We build relationships. That's what we do. It's a constant thing, but we need to start thinking about how do we build those relationships outside of our tasting rooms? How do we build those relationships outside of our club events, outside of our wine release parties or restaurant pairing parties? Like, it's the same basic idea, but do it in a digital way. When we think about building relationships, the first thing that you do when you're building a relationship with somebody that comes in, they walk into your door, you don't say, what would you like to buy? Buy now, buy now, buy now. They don't do that. You talk to them, you find out a little bit more about them, you engage them a little bit, you maybe give them something of value, right? You're telling them cool stories. And then down the road, towards the end of the experience, that's the, hey, what can I get for you? The same thing works in the digital world, right? Build stuff that you can give to your customers. Build a 10 recipe pairing guide that's in a PDF that they can download in exchange for their email address. Now we're having an introduction, right? Now we're beginning this relationship thing. A little bit of marketing automation. You got 3 or 4 emails over the course of a week or two, and then finally you can ask them, hey, we've had this cool conversation. I've given you a lot of great value. Are you interested in actually buying? And that's how we continue to inform and engage. Over time, you just continual reach out, right? There's many years ago, but still happens today in wine, there was a lot of conversation around how often is too often when it comes to email. And the answer is, it depends on the person you're emailing. So don't worry about it. If they don't want to see it, guess what? They're just not going to open it. And it's okay. Don't overthink that. If you have something interesting to say, if you have really cool content that you want to put out there, you can send an email every single day. Your open rates really aren't going to change. Your opt-out rates, they might go up a little bit, but the people that are opting out are the people that didn't want to see your email in the first place. That's okay. We know the customer. I spend time in various tasting rooms all throughout Napa. Obviously, Treasury has Beringer and Stag's Leap and BV and a lot of iconic places. So I will literally grab my laptop and I'll go work from a tasting room just to hear the conversations that my staff has with those customers. Because I get more insights from the people that are just in there saying, oh, this is cool, this is great. Or they'll tell a story, like I'll literally be hearing the story out of the side of my head, and a customer says, oh, that's interesting. Okay, guess what story we're telling in an email next week? Like, DTC people tend to know those customers. They tend to be much, much more accurate with who the customer is. What kinds of customers do we have? They don't necessarily, not everybody in the tasting room is going to have the marketing speak to be like, okay, this is our customer persona, and they go down the list. But you can have a conversation with them, and you can get a sense for what they're doing, why they're doing it. we go all the way down to saying, okay, all of the customers that are coming into this place today, what kind of clothes are they wearing? What are they doing? Where might they be shopping differently today than they were before? But you also notice I didn't say anything about their age. And I know, and this is a Silicon Valley Bank thing, and I apologize, like to me, we keep talking about why don't we get millennials and Gen Z to buy more wine? And I'm here to say that the answer has nothing to do with them being millennials or Gen Z. We all care about the same stuff. It's not like, oh, but millennials, they care more about it being organic, or they care more about what they're putting in their body. And I will tell you right now, you go to somebody that's 60 years old, they really care about what they're putting in their body right now. So what's the difference? And the reality is, and we continue to prove this out over and over again at Treasury, but I am fortunate to have an amazing team to help me do this, but we have no problem reaching millennials and Gen Z customers. And it's not that we're changing the story. It's not that we're changing what we think that they care about. It's simply that we're reaching them in the channel that they actually want to talk to us in. They don't want it. They're not reading Wine Enthusiast. No offense to Wine Enthusiast. Cool people, love the magazine, keep us with good ratings and all that fun stuff. But they're just not. So we have to search them out. We have to provide them with stories. We have to do it in the right way, in a way that makes sense. And we have to differentiate ourselves, right? So we have become super obsessed with those customers. And becoming super obsessed with customers also means that you treat everybody well. And you think about everybody as a customer, 21 and over in the United States. Let's make that very clear. But wine typically has a problem with that. There's a lot of the wine industry that says, these are our wine drinkers and we want more wine drinkers. And, oh, but that's a spirits drinker or that's a beer drinker. And I have not met a single person in my entire life that says, I only drink wine. If you do, great, that's awesome. You're gonna get a really small segment of the population, right? So I wanna know, hey, you're a spirits person, cool. What might I do differently to get you to try something? How might I bring you into a category and make it interesting to you? We're really expensive. Okay, that's also important. I mean, we have really high quality wines that are amazing. At the same time, that can really preclude an awful lot of people from ever trying wine. We can be a little bit snobbish. I think we deserve it, but that's okay. So we try different things. We put Snoop Dogg on a label. We launched Death Row Records wine as a DTC only wine in the end of October last year. No lists, no anything, but we're like, you know what? This is a segment of an audience that we think is interesting and we want to test it out. Over the course of the next 3 months, we sold 4,000 cases and then sent out a survey to say, how many of you have ever bought wine before? 84% of people that bought Death Row Records wine had never purchased a bottle of wine before. Now they have. You may not like it, but we reached them. And we hope over time that we continue to reach more and more people. We continue to be inclusive of ideas. We continue to bring on people that are inclusive, that are diverse, that have new ideas, that we're reaching outside of the wine industry and saying, how are everybody else reaching audiences? What are they doing differently? And then just applying it back to how we work. Justin Nolan, thank you guys very much.
Justin, I'm inspired to think about our digital footprints as wineries. That you know, there's this sort of place where we as wineries ask people to pay for flights and to rent cards and to book lodging and to spend money on restaurants. And of course, we want to keep our local economies going because they're billion-dollar economies. But what we often have failed to do in the digital space is replicate the experience we want people to have in the tasting room, in the digital space and on our websites. And I think that customer movement, thinking about, man, how can we engage customers the same way that we would when they walked in the door as when they log onto our URL, and that could be a really powerful move. That's got me going. Thank you, Justin. Next, speaking about culture, Ikemi DuBose-Woodson attended Johnson and Wales University, and after graduating, spent her time traveling around the world and learning about culture through food. When she returned to the United States, she became the youngest and first woman to complete the Marriott and Ritz-Carlton management training program. Her career has led her to culinary management teams at sports organizations, restaurant groups, at prestigious educational institutions, and eventually landing on Capitol Hill, where she led the culinary team there through the largest sustainable food initiative in history. Ikemi had rediscovered her passion as a mentor through that process, and is the co-founder of the Roots Fund. That is a nonprofit organization dedicated to creating inclusive opportunities for communities of color, founded in 2020. She currently runs that organization as the executive director, has overseen more than 155 scholars, and has a massive fundraising effort, high school job training programs, and provides extensive support for that organization. Ikemi.
I encountered the worst flight of my life getting here last night. I took it as a sign, should I be going to this? Because they're trying to kill me. I never experienced that much turbulence. I didn't even care about the crying baby. I was the crying baby. Thank you all for having me. Some of you I know we've seen around. Some of you have said committing things to me and not followed through. I see you. All right, I'm going to try to make this the shortest 20 minutes of your life. There's about 15 slides. We're not going to get through all of them, and a lot of grammatical errors. My new assistant started yesterday and said she's ashamed that I was an English major. But I will fix it up so that it can go out to you today, so that you can have these takeaway materials, because I believe that conversations like this aren't always effective if you can't really reach back. So let's get started. Shifting the culture. So we had some great conversations about tech, some great conversations about DTC, but we're going to talk about now the culture of your company and how you operate and how that's going to affect that new customer, all right? And don't worry, if we run out of question times later, I'm here all day. I'm here all day tomorrow. All right, so lovely word, DEI. Aren't we like sick of this term? I am. It's very exhausting. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, the newest letter to the group. Don't have the letter police chase me, no offense to anyone. DEI is really all about building relationships that lead to trust. That's really the core thing that you want to think about when you think about DEI. And I want to just take a moment. Let's look at some of the things we've done. People put up black squares. Portland had 1 million protests. Companies spent $1 billion on DEI in 2020. I was at the Forbes office a couple weeks ago, something big coming out. But they talked about all the money that's been invested in DEI work. And companies are now calculating data to see that nothing has changed in their organizations, and they're trying to figure out why and where they went wrong. I think to everyone, I tell you, if you want to think about inclusivity, think about it like a business concern. Everyone came in with the pandemic, right? Everyone pivoted. It's my favorite word. Oh, we pivoted. We got online sales. It changed everything. Look how quick you did that, because it affected your pocket. For those of you who aren't affected by being in environments that lack inclusivity, is coming. The age of the old white man is dying. He doesn't have an allocation for you. His kids don't care about your wine. If anything, it's taking up space in the house they're trying to sell when he's gone. So you need to start thinking, how do I get his daughter to stay on this allocation list? Let me help you. Okay, workplace culture. We're going to try to go quick in no particular order. We're going to talk about mission statements, inclusion statements, evaluating your staff, bias, hiring practices. I even got a cute video. Don't worry about me talking fast. I'm from New York. You're just listening slow, but you'll keep up. I pray for you. All right, mission statements. Hello to anyone from Adelsheim. David's my friend. He's okay with this. So we've got a mission statement at the top. I made up a fake winery. They're basically telling you their story. I think a lot of people get that convoluted. Your winery story is not your mission statement. Your mission statement is about your commitment to others. So that should be at the forefront. So there's a statement up here from this Cabernet Cellars. They're telling you about how long they've been in the business. It started in a garage. This is where we are now. It says nothing about community. It says nothing about inclusivity. It says nothing about people. Then you've got a mission statement on the bottom. It's from Adelsheim. They don't mind. The key sentence in that mission statement from Adelsheim is, as leaders, we believe it is our duty to be steadfast stewards of this abundant land and to rally our community in support of equity and education. What that one sentence alone does is creates a whole nother market that is now intrigued at coming to that winery because they feel like you've created a space for them. And that's really just a baby statement, no offense. That's just a one-liner that actually plugs someone in. The first time I sat with the CEO at Adelsheim, he didn't know that a couple days before we met, I had came into their tasting room because I wanted to see how I'm treated. If you've seen me in your establishment and you've never heard from me, take that as a hint. I went into Adelsheim and I never felt more accepted and had a great experience. I had also read some people that had bad ones, but I'm like, I had a great one. People came in, hey, what do you like to drink? That's the first question I was asked. What do you like to drink? Not what do you know about wine? What do you like to drink? What resonates with you? I talked about tequila for 10 minutes. And they managed to come out with a whole lineup that brought me into their wine. And I had tasted it before, but I tried to pretend like I hadn't. But it's things like that that create environments for new customers and new people to come into the space. So some of my favorite things are, let's get away from mission statements. I say tell your story. There's a place for that. There's a place for that on your website. There's a place for that in a banner, in your lobby. Really cute. People want to hear that. I think the people that work there need to tell your story. I think we need to focus on inclusion statements. And that doesn't mean go home today and write one and post it. I don't want anyone to do that. Google kind of does it the best. And I was at Silicon Valley a couple weeks ago teaching them about wine. And they brought up their inclusion statement, which is in their lobby. And every employee kind of knew it verbatim. It's almost like they were drinking a Kool-Aid. I kind of believe they're being drugged, but I'm going to let that go. But at Google, their inclusion statement replaced their mission statement. It says, at Google, we don't just accept difference. We celebrate it, we support it, and we thrive on it for the benefit of our employees, our products, and our community. It's the first thing that you see. And I asked their VP there, and I was like, why did you get rid of your mission statement? He said, because we weren't living it. It didn't reflect our employees. No one read it. People walked past it. And the plaque on the wall cost us like $50K. And we were like, what are we doing here? We could do something way more effective. So I'm encouraging people to build inclusion statements. That's what's going to resonate with your new customers. That's what's going to resonate with your workforce. So in Google's inclusion statement, something that really resonated with me is that they put out a diversity annual report every year. It's a compilation of how their employees feel about working there. And that's a powerful statement to put out there. And I read it, and there were a couple red flags. I was like, you could have deleted this. But they actually put it out, but it was very small in comparison to all the great things that they were doing. But what I loved about it is that it says Google is committed to creating a diverse and inclusive workforce. Our employees thrive when we get this right. That is the catch. That's really the secret to the sauce of shifting the culture. Who are the people you're working with? Let me give you an example. I got a call from an Oregon winery last week. We're not going to name them. I don't do that. They said to me, Kimmy, we're going to have Roots Fund scholars this year for internship. I was like, well, I'm thinking on it. Well, I want to know what's the best way to make them feel comfortable. That was a red flag to me. It shouldn't be about making them feel comfortable. I said back to him, well, what's the best way to let me know that your staff is prepared to accept people that don't look like them? Because the problem isn't making people of color feel comfortable. It's about the team being prepared to have those conversations. I'll give you a story. We'll go off track for a minute. Had a scholar in a winery this year domestically. She went to harvest, first time, works in DTC, wanted to do a harvest. She tells me about how glamorous she's going to be during harvest, not realizing it's going to kill her. She calls me like week 2, and she's like, I have to take baths every night. I eat, I go to bed, I wake up, I repeat. This is so exhausting. I want to get my hair braided. Something common in our culture, hair takes a lot of time. So I find someone to braid her hair. She's like, thank God, I was spending so much time in the morning getting ready. She went back to work. And her first 2 days, she checks in with me. And she goes, I'm so exhausted. I said, why are you so exhausted? She says, if someone else at this damn winery tells me about what happened with my hair, why is my hair braided? She was like, let's talk about cleaning tanks. My hair being braided is so irrelevant. But such an uncomfortable conversation. She said I had to have an employee meeting during lunch to explain about braids. And she was like, that's not my job. And why does that matter to anything that I'm doing? That's a perfect example and a great segue, because we're going to talk about bias in a moment. Bad grammar right there, don't read that. Let's talk about your current staff. All right, I bring up that conversation to say a lot of things happen in the workplace because the employees don't know how to act around someone they haven't seen before. When I was in college, my first roommate was a Mormon from Utah. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. Can you see where we're going with this? Also, Melissa's mom blames me for everything that's happened wrong in her life that she picked up with. Melissa vowed to stay with me all 2 years of college until I became an RA, and then she tried to live in my dorm because she had been so confined living in her environment and being exposed to something else. This is the same thing that happens when you have different people in your establishment. But you gotta create a space for your employees to get this sorted before we start this work. You gotta talk to the people who are working with you every day. So create an outlet for feedback that's open without repercussions. Whether it's one-on-one, whether it's a group, whether it's anonymous surveys, people will actually fill them in. They're gonna tell you how they feel about work. Talk about conflict management. Someone is gonna say something wrong. Get over yourself. You gotta deal with it. If you need conflict management training, Google it, find someone to help you and your management team do it. If your CEO is not a part of this work, you will fail. Everything that my staff trains on, I train on. And some of it I'm like, I mastered this. I still attend the trainings, I'm still active, I still participate. Your CEO, your HR, they're not above this. If you're a small winery, this is perfect for an all-team activity. But conflicts will arise because people will say things that are uncomfortable. You just need to be able to deal with the discomfort, and how you know you're doing it right is that it never happens again. If it happens repeatedly, it's a direct reflection of your poor leadership. I'm saying that slow, poor leadership. Training your teams to understand bias is a good way to prepare for new environments, and coaching around cultural differences, ensuring that the workplace rules are observant of every team's culture. If you have an environment at your winery that is heavy on Latin culture, you can't just absorb all of them under one umbrella and call them Hispanic or Latin or Latinx. My father's Cuban, he hates Latinx. He's like, who invented this? It's the stupidest term ever. I would never refer to myself as such. However, I have girlfriends who love this term. You gotta be respectful to everyone. It's tedious, but it takes a couple seconds to acknowledge someone where they are and meet them where they are. It takes nothing away from you. It's gonna only make you a better person, but you have to be able to acknowledge those things. All right, we are gonna get to the video in 1 second, but I just wanted to quickly talk about bias because I find that the hardest thing with changing your work environments and your employees and getting to the bottom of the problem is, like I keep saying, people have not interacted with others that don't look like them. So we have to be prepared to have a conversation about bias. I came into my hotel last night, Hyatt across the street. I travel in sweats. I'm a Nike endorser. I work with a lot of NBA players. I honestly can travel with whatever I want. I get into the hotel lobby, trying to find my email from Bree, like, what's my hotel information? I had the hotel security come up to me and tell me that the bathroom isn't open to the public. I know, and I have away luggage. Okay, no one is as stylish as me. Do you see my coat? It's like Sherpa. But irregardless, that was my first interaction after getting off a plane. And I'm like, and I walked back over to him, so what gave you that notion? Is it my stylish sweatsuit, or like, what is it for you to say that to me? It was so uncomfortable, but some people kind of cave at that. I actually live for it. I read him the riot act like he's never seen. I'm gonna see the general manager in about an hour because we're gonna address it. But that's the kind of thing when you think of with bias. What made him come up to me and say that and then feel comfortable in saying it? He won't say it again though. So we've got biases here. We gotta address them. You can't close your operation for 4 hours like Starbucks and cure racism. You've got to constantly look at privilege in class. How you feel if the stress of your day is going to Whole Foods or that really fancy supermarket you guys have here that I love, and your employees are not thinking about the same thing. So we have to be conscious of that. Looking at women who've been pregnant in the workplace and they're returning to work, how do you treat them after? It's not that they can't lift the box, it's that they're fine and just pushed out a baby. If anything, they're a superhero. It's looking at biases we connect with people. You see someone Asian, does that mean they're good at computers? No, my friend Lee is horrible. He does not have this. That's a joke. You can laugh. It's okay. So what we're going to do is watch this quick. Do we have time? Can I watch my video? Yeah? Don't worry. I'll be fast. Hit it. Tim, is that your name again? Yeah? You're my guy. I appreciate you. My good friend Cyrilda.
lot about establishing a diverse and inclusive work environment and creating a culture where people feel free to be themselves, to take up space, I say, right? When I use the word take up space, I mean, if you feel passionate about a topic, you can have big gestures and be a woman or be a person of color, or, you know, have a quiver in your voice and be a woman and not have to worry about all of the stereotypes and assumptions that will be made on you based on your gender or your race or your religious background. You can take up space and be exactly who you are, free from all of the baggage associated with the stereotypes affixed to who you are. When people use coded language about why certain groups of people can access certain resources and other folks that have concerns about other folks accessing those resources, they're usually playing into the stereotypes that are affixed to your group that you're a member of. So for me, as a Black woman, I'm angry, emotional, volatile, tardy, right? Lazy, sometimes criminal, loud, brazen. I mean, there are many, many, many stereotypes that are associated with me just based on the skin that I have, based on the gender that I was born with. Those things exist. This is not an extreme example. The loaded language associated with it is, I had a conversation with Cyrilda and I was afraid. I'm afraid to go and have a conversation with Cyrilda. If I tell Cyrilda that I don't like what she did in her, in her presentation, she's gonna lash out at me. That's loaded language. Where is that coming from? Has she demonstrated that she's actually gonna do anything of that nature? Or is it just because she's got big gestures? Is it just because she's got an afro that automatically elicits fear in you? Those things manifest into policy. Those feelings manifest into rules and regulations that are oppressive to people like me. And I can give you a million of those examples, but they happen all day long. And human resources has got to be charged with interrupting that, digging deeper, asking questions like, has she ever demonstrated that if you give her feedback, she's going to lash out? Has she ever demonstrated that if she works from home, she doesn't work at all? HR has got to facilitate the deeper dive into what's happening inside the person who owns and harbors those assumptions and biases. And they also got to facilitate the coming together of the two people who are from different cultures, different backgrounds, different genders, to explore where the rub is, where the discomfort is. Because if you, the person who's in power, are uncomfortable with that individual, there's probably some discomfort on the side of the person who doesn't have any power when it comes to relating to you.
By the way, those videos are free, great training tools. So to kind of get into the last part of it, we talked about bias, we talked about inclusion statements, we talked about values in your mission. It really starts with you taking care of your employees, and also to find that demographic that Justin talked about with DTC is figuring out your hiring practices. I'm just gonna quickly go through a few things. Looking at your applications and how you're viewing them. Are you sending people back adequate responses when they don't qualify? Are you explaining? People are owed that, regardless of their color. But I will tell you, for people of color, it's traumatic when you get that generic email that says, hey, Oscar, you don't qualify for this job. We're looking at other candidates. You should be able to have that conversation. If you're too not fond of doing that, then maybe you should relook at why you're hiring in the first place. Always include diversity and inclusion in your ads. People want to know now, I'm letting you know, this new generation, the generation currently, wants to know what you're doing in the community, how you are being inclusive before they work with you. They will not sell their souls as we did. Looking at your resume pool, how you're evaluating resumes, make sure you have a standard formula so you're being equal and fair to everyone. I know myself, I'm hiring for several positions on my team. When I see someone from Georgetown or Johnston Wells, I go crazy. It's a bias. It's wrong. That doesn't mean they're as good as me just because they're from my alma mater. But that's a perfect example of a bias that we use all the time. Closing the pay gap, making sure your men and women are making the same. Let me let you know, all your employees are sharing their salaries in the bathroom via text. It's on the Slack. They got a group text behind your back. They're telling you who makes what, who got what bonus. It's not private anymore. You got to get over that. You got to make sure the playing field is clear and leveled. And look at where you're hiring from. Go to different outlets. Winejobs.com, sorry, Eric, I love you, is not the only place to hire from. You've got to look into different places. You really have to be in your community. In Oregon, I feel like I interviewed last week with CNN, and they asked me to list the most progressive wine regions, and I didn't put Oregon down. I think you guys are not doing a great job. And you're in such an inclusive, progressive city. When I think about progressive cities, you're at the top of my list next to New York. But I don't feel our industry is being reflective of that. And that doesn't mean that someone doesn't want to drive 2 hours out to your winery that looks different from you. That means, are you just making an effort to get into that community? That's all you got to do. That's the first step. And that's easy and it's free. Don't make excuses. You got to be productive about things. And do data. I know we don't want to talk about surveys, but it's important. You need to be able to scale your work. Ask your employees, that's where you start from. Stop building employee resource groups. They're exhausted and they hate you. They don't want to sign up for another diversity committee that's doing nothing. Take away all the groups. I literally say disband them today and send out a company-wide email. Not effective. Find people who care about it, get people who represent from those groups on your team, and go with that. It's Black History Month right now, but guess what? People are Black all year. When it's Latinx Month, they're Latin all year. Appreciate them all year, and they will be more effective and more engaged during the times in which you want to highlight them and put that out there. And you don't need a ticker tape parade. You don't need a news conference. It shouldn't be actively in your newsletter even. Just let it be organic. Let people come into your space and see what you represent. Those are the people who are going to come in when it's raining. Those are the people when there's a fire, God forbid, they're going to come out and work because they feel you care about them. I think care is the biggest thing. Gary V is my guy, and we've had multiple conversations recently about wealth and bringing up and charity and things of that nature, but really that's the thing we've lost. It's like we got it back in the pandemic, and now we're like, game over, start again. Let's go back to being discriminatory. So I think it's important. You look at your staff, you start within there, let them help you build your inclusion statement, but you got to do the work first and make sure your house is clean before you invite the guests over. That's what my Nana says. Anyway, you'll get this presentation. Everything I'm telling you about are great tools. Use your Googles. Hire people who are effective in these areas in which you're lacking. Let them train your team. When your team is right, then you can accept others, and trust me, it's going to help your business. One last thing I'll give to you. I've got 2 scholars working in South Africa remotely right now on social campaigns. We went to South Africa, I made 1 million friends, obviously. And they came back to me and said, Kimmy, we're looking for brand ambassadors, people who can come here, film content. We're trying to get into that digital age. Both of these wineries suffering since the pandemic kind of came down from people buying wine. Both their sales are up 30%. And what's the most common thing that they get? People come in and say, I feel seen when I'm here. And this is just ads, videos they shot, new inclusion statement. They fired a couple people on the team who were toxic and brought in some people who are actually from that community, and they're thriving. It took them 2 months to build that plan and make changes. It's not hard, you just gotta be able to willing to apply yourself to really change your culture, but to change the culture, we have to change from within. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
Kimmy, I am. No, you're great. I am reminded of the truth that there is. It's never too late to enter to the practice and the work that makes this industry and the people that we serve, both as employees and as customers. It's never too late to enter in that work, and that the work is ongoing, and that's for all of us. And thank you for that inspiring message today. We've got a little bit of time for Q&A. And so I'm just going to take a quick look here through the app, which I will attempt to not call the wrong name again. Wova, Woova, Hoova, all of the different things. We'll set up a microphone here. There's one over here for people who might want to ask questions in real time. The first question that we had is, will Paul's slide deck be available post-session? And the answer is yes, all of the decks will be available. So for the panel, how are things like Vivino helping expand the wine audience?
Yeah, so I have a saying. I love Heinies, a friend of mine, but marketplaces eat markets. Right? I think that Vivino is making accessibility for information better, so it's a lot, but marketplaces eat markets, meaning that if you allow someone else to use your inventory to sell the product and you don't get the customer and they take a margin, they can move that to someone else, or using your inventory to gain customers. And whether you look at DoorDash, Amazon, All of those marketplaces are not healthy contributors to the market overall. But I do think that the app, that technology is good for letting people be able to access at point of purchase. But that, as a tool helping our industry out, it's just another middleman. Oh, did I say it like that? That's pretty... Wow, I was silent. You can hear a pin drop. Yeah.
If you all didn't know about Vivino, this past fall, they sent out an enormous survey that included all kinds of demographic questions, all kinds of behavioral questions. I think in the middle of harvest, I was so interested. I think I spent about 45 minutes filling it out because I wanted to know what they were asking about. And if from that position of taking that survey, the thing that I realized was that they actually have no idea what their business is at this point. They created what is I think the largest wine label database ever assembled in the world. The previous largest database actually is it's a tiny castle at the Wine Label Museum somewhere in Switzerland that I went to when I was traveling through Europe. So there's now this huge database of wine labels. They have offices in multiple countries around the world. This is not a United States focused application, even though we are the largest wine market in the world. They are still trying to figure out what to do, how to do it, and what their own purpose is. I think maybe another question would be, are there other applications that you all see like Vivino that are useful, that do have purpose, and that you think are making important moves in the digital space? No.
You're killing me. Yeah, no, you can't do an infomercial. I think Provi's doing a really amazing job. If you guys haven't been dealing with Provi, it's like the intermediary wholesale B2B platform. They bought 750. I think they're doing a pretty interesting. We have a lot of old tech companies. A lot of tech companies have really been failing trying to figure out how to help the consumer out and how to help you as a brand out. I think that's the essential problem. And people unraveling that's key.
I was going to say, and I can do an infomercial. They didn't give me any rules, so it doesn't matter. I will actually say Pix, especially as a large organization that deals with a lot of different channels. We want as much data as we could possibly handle. We want to treat our retailers as fairly as possible. We know people are looking online for wine information, to discover new things, to find new things. So having a partner like Pix that allows consumers to do that in a really agnostic way, where we're not necessarily worried about the actual conversion on the site. We're able to support our retailers, both small, large, and across the board, is absolutely a huge tool for us.
I've got his check ready to go.
Yeah, so Pix is Paul's website. I don't know if you're catching on why. Paul is the CEO and founder of Pix. What percentage of growth is being projected via online wine sales? Is there any data about where that is currently headed that is useful?
Yeah, it's supposed to continue growing. The stall out is pretty brutal. We should be getting up to 19-20%. We were supposed to hit that path. We just stalled out. And I think what happened is when we returned to normal life, we started going back to opening tasting rooms and dealing with staffing shortages and all this stuff. So we took our eye off the ball and moving it forward. And that's, I think, part of the stall out you saw last year. This year's stall out is it's working now. We're not investing in trying to get new customers. Yeah. Justin spends a ton of money and time getting new customers.
Me too.
Yeah.
It also, just on that question, kind of depends on how you define e-commerce, right? So if you think about the entire ecosystem of people buying wine online, we are still growing and growing relatively quickly. We're looking at between 15 and 20% year over year. It's just, the question is whether it's the direct branded e-commerce business versus the retailer e-commerce business. Is it just eating share, which is the reality, right? So growth in sales and getting customers more and more used to buying online, absolutely happening. It's can we increase the share of customers overall? Is our next outreach.
I have a fascinating question here that just came through, and this speaks to an operation side of things where owners and team members may see things differently in the world. How do you navigate an owner who has a clear bias, but you are the operations manager and tasting room manager trying to drive inclusion and equity for staff across the tasting room and to the harvest staff?
That's a good question.
Kimmy will be here for the next 45 minutes.
I'll be here for the next 2 hours.
answering this question.
I think when you have an owner like that, you really have to have a sit down with them to identify their direct biases. But like I said, you need to make it business. At the end of the day, that's really what it is. I've got a couple donors who involve themselves in some shady politics. At the end of the day, it's a dollar. Correlate it to dollars, and it'll make sense. That owner will see it front right out. Let him show you the decline and compare yourself to others in the area. Like, this is what they're doing, and these are the things they're having, the type of attendance. But that's really the best way to make an owner see it. You have to see how it's hurting them financially. It's unfortunate, but let's just put it out there like that. It's a business problem.
I think for those of you in the room who were at the WVWA annual meeting this past week, last week now, what was talked about at that was exactly on that point, that the transition in demographics in the United States by the year, I think 2040 is the new date, when this is no longer a majority white country. And if you are not prepared for that, if you are not planning for it, your business is going to hurt, it is going to die. That is part of the risk of not doing the work and not getting into it and not listening and not putting things into practice. So if you are willing to risk that, that's up to you. But I can almost guarantee the people working for you are not willing to risk that. Let's see. This is interesting. Are scores altogether a thing of the past? Not to reference what was mentioned about wine enthusiast earlier, but are scores a thing of the past?
Do you want to start? Or you want
Yeah, I'll definitely no. People think about them differently, but as it comes to somebody having confidence in making a purchase, they're absolutely not. And we have empirical data where you can put a score up on a product page and understand whether or not somebody puts that product into their cart and makes a conversion versus the exact same product page, A/B tested across the board. So the data says they're still important. Who it's from, maybe not so.
Yeah, I mean, the whole goal with wine is risk aversion, right? Is this bottle over $20 going to be worth putting in my mouth or not? Am I worth spending that money? And a score is a reinforcer of that. And different to different cohorts, obviously, as well. Like, people that grew up with scores are more score heavy than people that don't, looking at, different descriptors. But yeah, scores are still important, but they're also not important. How many wines have you seen on Wine Still Sold Out or Wine Access or Wine Library or any of the flash sale sites that have a 95 plus that are selling at half price?
Yikes.
Yeah, a lot. A lot, because there's a lot of wine out there. It's hard to sell, guys. It's easier to make than it is to sell. I hate to say that.
That is absolutely true. I can totally affirm that. Can you sell wine only online and not have a tasting room?
Yeah. Justin.
Absolutely.
So Justin has a great story. I'll toot his horn from him. He started a winery called One Hope. One Brick with a third rate, awesome lady, but a country western singer is not like top tier. I think that winery went from 0 to 20,000 cases, all DTC in 3 months.
3 months.
At an average SRP of like $20 to $30. So think about that. Now, did she have an active audience? Did she work into? Yes. Did she have someone to draft that? But they knew it wasn't like it's just a celebrity brand. They knew she loved drinking wine. Then and Justin really worked in where they did private concerts during COVID, and they'd have a little Zoom concert where she's playing. It was brilliant. But how many would you like to go to 20,000 cases? I mean, well, at that price point, that's a great cash cow.
Yeah. Yeah, you should be thinking about your website. You should be thinking about your online presence for any of your brands in the exact same way that you're thinking about your tasting rooms.
Yep.
What is the experience? How are you adding value? How are you making it interesting? Why would people come back?
And I don't think you can replicate what you said earlier, the tasting room experience online, but you can create a much better or a different one that creates value. I don't think you can replicate.
Now, if we look at the amount of customers that are available through mobile and the amount of people on mobile versus desktop who are participating in e-commerce, looking at those demographic changes, and yes, they do tend to skew a little bit younger, but if we're talking about this zennial, millennial, whatever ennial thing that we're supposed to be solving, if we're talking about going where the customers are, they are on mobile.
But it's not even about demographic. Every one of you raise your hand and you have a smartphone. Have you shopped your website using your smartphone?
I bet
Right?
it doesn't go
Have
well.
you shopped it in a shitty, hard to get cell phone area? It's even worse. It's painful. I mean, that's fundamental. So it doesn't matter who you were in this room. Everyone buys online at least. Yeah.
I want to thank you all for coming, for giving your attention, for listening. The question posed of why we are here, I want you all to think about that as you go away. Think about the content of what the presenters have offered about the purpose of what we are doing. And more than that, the answer for the future of wine, believe it or not, is you. You are here in the room. This depends on you, what you're going to do. Our industry will only thrive with you in it. So take heart. It is not all doom and gloom. There is good to come, and there is hope to be taken advantage of. So I hope you all have the rest of the day. Enjoy the symposium. Thanks for being here. And thanks to all of our panelists, to Paul, to Justin, to Akimi. Thank you all very much.